In the golden halls of Asgard, where the high towers gleam against the vault of the sky and the Bifrost bridge glitters like fire across the heavens, there reigns a queen whose wisdom is second only to the All-Father himself. This is Frigg, wife of Odin, mother of Baldr, and lady of Fensalir, the hall of still waters. She is the goddess of foresight, of marriage, of weaving, and of all the hidden powers that bind kin to kin and fate to fate. The skalds tell that none among the goddesses is held in greater reverence. Where Freya's beauty is fierce and wild, Frigg's is calm and queenly, shining with the dignity of a wife, a mother, and a keeper of oaths. Where Sif tends the earth's golden fields, Frigg weaves the threads of destiny upon her great loom, her shuttle striking out the patterns that even Odin himself will not always reveal. In her hands, the future is not a battlefield of spears and blood, but a tapestry of choices, sorrows, and hopes. Frigg sits at Odin's side upon the high seat Hliskjolf, and from there she, like her husband, can gaze upon all the worlds. She does not speak all she sees, for she knows the weight of foresight, that to reveal too much is to chain the free, and to say too little is to leave them blind. Thus she carries her wisdom with silence, and the gods honor her for it. Yet she is not cold nor distant, for her heart is full of love, especially for her children, and for Baldr most of all, the bright god who was her joy. In Fensalir, her hall, waters ripple gently, reflecting the calm of her spirit. Maidens dwell there with her, many named for compassion, faith, or service. They attend her as she spins the clouds and winds, weaving not only cloth but the very fabric of the sky. Mortals, too, prayed to Frigg, calling on her aid in childbirth, in marriage, and in oaths between families. For she knew the secret ways of women's power, which lies not in steel but in the bonds of kin, in the strength of hearth and home, and in the foresight to guide their fate. Yet Frigg's wisdom was shadowed by sorrow. For though she knew much, she also knew that fate cannot be wholly unmade. She foresaw her son Baldr's doom, and though she strove with all her might to save him, still the hand of destiny fell. In her story is found the grief of a mother, the dignity of a queen, and the unyielding strength of one who endures loss yet never falters. Thus begins the tale of Frigg, the silent weaver, the watchful mother, the queen whose heart bore both love and sorrow, and whose wisdom runs deep as the still waters of her hall. In the quiet hall of Fensalir, where waters lie calm as a mirror and mists drift like dreams, Frigg is said to sit at her great loom. Not of wood and wool alone is this loom fashioned, but of the very fibers of the cosmos, threads spun from time itself, strands drawn from the lives of gods and mortals alike. Upon it Frigg weaves destinies, her hands moving with a patience deeper than centuries, her shuttle passing like the flight of stars. The Norns, those ancient shapers who dwell at the roots of Yggdrasil, are often spoken of as the carvers of fate, yet many skalds whispered that Frigg's weaving was kin to theirs. If the Norns chiseled destiny into stone, Frigg softened it into fabric, giving form and color to what was already set. She did not defy the Norns, for none may do so, but she wove with them, guiding the flow of fate into patterns more harmonious, less cruel. Upon her loom she wove not only the lives of kings but the humble tasks of farmers, shepherds, mothers, and children. In her weaving the storms and seasons had their place, as did the harvests and the years of peace. In this way she was loved by mortals, for though Odin dealt in war and wisdom, Frigg's touch lay upon their homes and hearths. Women especially called to her, praying as they spun their flax or wove their cloth, believing that each turn of the spindle echoed the goddess's eternal weaving. It was said that when Odin sought to peer into the deep future from Hliskjolf, Frigg already knew what he would see, for she had woven it long before. And yet she often kept her knowledge close, for she was not one to scatter foresight like gold to the unworthy. Instead, she bore her wisdom in silence, guiding with gentle counsel or with a mother's subtle hand. Odin himself, lord of many secrets, trusted Frigg's word above all others, for her insight was neither born of ravens nor of runes, but of the quiet certainty of the loom. But even a weaver cannot change the strength of the thread, nor unspin what has been laid. Frigg could shape the flow, but she could not unmake doom itself. This truth weighed upon her heart, for she knew of coming sorrows. And though she never ceased her weaving, each stroke of the shuttle carried with it her love and her grief, mingled into the fabric of the worlds. Thus the skalds sang that the clouds themselves were the cloth of Frigg, and the winds her threads. And when the sky grew still, with waters reflecting heaven, that was the mirror of Fensalir, where Frigg's loom whispered the destiny of all living things. Baldr the Bright, son of Odin and Frigg, was the joy of Asgard. Fairer than any god, wise beyond his years, gentle and just, he was loved by all. Yet one night Baldr's sleep was troubled. Dreams came upon him like shadows creeping across the sun, and in them he saw his own death. Again and again he awoke, shaken, for though he was a god, he feared what fate showed him. When the gods heard of this, unease spread through Asgard. For none believed Baldr could come to harm, he was too beloved, too radiant, too blessed. But the dreams clung to him, and the gods turned to Frigg, his mother, for counsel. Frigg listened, her heart heavy. Of all the goddesses, she alone could see threads of fate, and in her son's dream she recognized the shadow of doom. Yet she would not surrender him to sorrow without a fight. From Fensalir she set forth, not in warlike fury but with the quiet strength of a mother's love. She traveled the 9 worlds, from Asgard to Midgard, from Jotunheim to the deepest sea. To every creature, every force, every root and stone she spoke. She begged, bargained, and commanded oaths, that none should harm her son. Fire swore it would not burn him. Water promised it would not drown him. Stones swore they would not strike him, metals that they would not pierce him, beasts that they would not bite him, plants that they would not wound him. Even the earth itself bent to her will, vowing not to turn against the bright god. All things gave their word, save one. A small plant, young and soft, growing west of Valhalla, the mistletoe. So slight was it, so harmless in appearance, that Frigg thought it beneath notice. Too young, too frail, she said, to be of danger. And so she left it be. When she returned to Asgard, she proclaimed her success. The gods rejoiced, and to test Baldr's invulnerability they gathered in sport. They hurled stones and spears at him, cast axes and hurled fists, but none could harm him. Laughter filled the fields, for Baldr stood unscathed, shining more brightly than ever. Only Loki, sly and watchful, saw what Frigg had overlooked. He smiled in silence, already plotting. Thus Frigg's great labor seemed at first a triumph, yet within it lay the seed of her deepest sorrow. For though she had crossed all worlds to win her son's safety, the small and the forgotten would undo all her care. The gods delighted in their game, but fate had already taken its place upon the loom, and Frigg's heart, though calmed, did not wholly rest. For she knew that no oath, however strong, could hold forever against the pull of destiny. The joy of Asgard had become its sport. Day after day the gods gathered in the fields, laughing as they hurled stones, spears, and axes at Baldr, who stood unharmed. Nothing could wound him, for every force of the worlds had sworn an oath to Frigg, his mother, never to harm her son. And so Baldr's seeming invulnerability filled the gods with delight. Yet one among them was not laughing, Loki, the trickster, whose heart seethed with envy at Baldr's perfection. Disguised as an old woman, Loki went to Fensalir, where Frigg sat in quiet peace. He spoke to her with feigned innocence, asking about the game the gods played. Frigg, proud and relieved, told of her great labor, how she had won oaths from all things to keep her son safe. But when Loki pressed her, she confessed one omission, the mistletoe, so young and harmless, that she had deemed it too small to swear. At that moment Loki's eyes glinted like steel, though he bowed and thanked her, leaving without suspicion. From the earth he cut a slender sprig of mistletoe, green and pale, and shaped it into a dart. With this he returned to the gathering, where gods and goddesses laughed at their game. Apart from the joy stood Hodr, Baldr's blind brother, silent and sorrowful that he could not join their sport. Loki came to him, whispering, "Why do you not cast as the others do? Show your love for your brother, and I shall guide your hand." Hodr, trusting, took the dart Loki placed within his grasp. Guided by Loki, Baldr cast the mistletoe. Swift and sure it flew, and when it struck Baldr, the laughter ceased. For where all other weapons had failed, this frail sprig pierced him deep. Baldr fell, lifeless, his radiance dimmed, his body pale. A silence heavier than night fell upon the field. The gods stood frozen, grief-struck and horrified, while Loki's smile faded into shadow. Frigg's cry echoed across Asgard, a mother's wail that broke the hearts of all who heard. None dared touch Baldr's body, for none believed what had happened. Hodr, stricken with guilt, wept bitterly, knowing not that he had been used by Loki's malice. Thus, through cunning and deceit, the beloved of Asgard was slain. And though Frigg had crossed the 9 worlds to save him, one small oversight had undone her. The laughter of the gods was silenced, and in its place came sorrow that would never wholly fade. For Baldr's death was not only the loss of joy, it was the first tolling of the bell that heralded Ragnarok. When Baldr fell, silence covered Asgard like a shroud. No laughter rose in the golden halls, no joy echoed in the mead benches. Even the sky seemed dimmer, for Baldr's light no longer shone. Frigg's grief was greater than words could hold. Her son, her bright one, the joy of gods and men alike, lay cold. Yet though sorrow crushed her, she did not surrender to despair. For Frigg knew of Hel, queen of the underworld, and she resolved that her beloved might yet be won back. She called forth Hermod the brave, swift son of Odin, and bade him ride to the realm of Hel. For this task, Odin gave him Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, the only horse mighty enough to bear a rider through the dark paths that led below. Frigg wept as Hermod set forth, her tears falling like rain upon the stones of Asgard. For 9 nights Hermod rode through deep valleys and shadowed caverns, until he came at last to the river Joel, bridged with gold, and beyond it to the gates of Hel's hall. Meanwhile in Asgard, Frigg did not sit idle. She sent messengers across the worlds, pleading with every creature, every stone, every plant and beast, every drop of water and every wisp of flame, to weep for Baldr. For Hel had decreed this, if all things would shed tears for him, she would let him return to the living. And so the worlds wept. Gods and men wept, giants and dwarves, trees bent with grief, and stones glistened with dew like tears. Even metals rang mournful, and waters rose in sorrow. All wept, save one. Hermod, meanwhile, had reached Hel's hall, where Baldr sat, pale yet still radiant, honored among the dead. Hermod pleaded with Hel for his release. The cold queen listened, her face unmoved, and gave her condition, only if all things in creation wept for him would he be freed. Hermod returned with Baldr's ring Draupnir as a token, and with words of farewell from the shining god. When Hermod bore this message to Asgard, hope stirred. For who could not weep for Baldr, the most beloved of all beings? And indeed, all did, save for one giantess named Thok, who sat in a dark cave. She mocked the pleas, saying Baldr had brought her no joy in life and none in death, and so she would shed no tear. The gods knew it was Loki in disguise, but the bargain was broken. Hel's decree could not be undone. Frigg's heart broke anew. All her efforts, all her pleas, all the tears of the worlds had not sufficed. Baldr would remain in Hel's cold realm until Ragnarok. And though her sorrow was endless, she bore it in silence, as a queen and a mother, holding her grief as one holds a wound that never heals. From the day Baldr fell, a shadow lingered in Asgard. The mead benches rang hollow, and the songs of the skalds faltered, for the light of the bright god was gone. None grieved more deeply than Frigg. Her tears had once moved stone and flame, beast and tree, yet they could not soften the heart of Hel. She had begged the worlds to weep, and they had answered, yet because of Loki's malice, one tear was withheld, and doom prevailed. Still, though her grief was boundless, Frigg did not fall into despair. She was queen of Asgard, the weaver of destiny, and she bore her sorrow as she bore her foresight, in silence, with dignity, with endurance. Her hall Fensalir became a place of mourning, its still waters now reflecting not only calm but loss. Maidens wept with her, yet she did not cast aside her duties. She continued to weave the threads of fate, her shuttle striking like a heartbeat, her loom carrying the weight of sorrow into the fabric of the worlds. The gods turned often to her in those dark days. Odin brooded, seeking wisdom in runes and in the dead, but Frigg's counsel was softer, more enduring. She reminded them that even in grief, the bonds of family, of hearth, and of kinship must remain unbroken. She urged the goddesses to tend the homes of Asgard, for what good was war counsel if love and order withered? In her, the others saw not only a mother's sorrow, but a queen's strength. Yet she could not wholly hide her wound. Often she walked to Baldr's empty seat, laying her hand upon it, whispering prayers only the winds could hear. When she passed, even the air seemed heavy, as if the worlds themselves shared her mourning. To mortals she became the embodiment of both hope and grief. Women called upon her in childbirth, asking her to guard their children from fate's cruelty. Widows prayed for her strength, seeing in her their own silent endurance. Though she never ceased to weave, her tapestry was forever changed. What once gleamed bright with patterns of joy now bore threads of darker hue, for Baldr's death had marked the gods themselves. Yet still she wove, binding sorrow with love, grief with hope, knowing that even in despair there is strength. For to abandon her loom was to abandon all the worlds, and Frigg's heart, though shattered, remained steadfast. Thus she endured, a mother who had lost her son, a queen who had lost her joy, yet who bore her sorrow with grace. Her silent strength was remembered in every hearth, every family, every bond of love that held firm against the weight of fate. The weaving of Frigg's loom carried all things, the births of kings, the laughter of children, the rise and fall of empires, the sorrows of gods. Yet always, hidden deep in the cloth, there was a darker pattern, a thread of doom that no hand could cut. For even Frigg, wisest of queens, knew that the day of Ragnarok must come. And though she never spoke of it aloud, the sorrow lived in her eyes, for she had seen the end more clearly than most. When the signs began, the long Fimbulwinter with snow unending, brother rising against brother, bonds of kinship broken, it was Frigg who felt the weight most keenly. Her halls of Fensalir grew quiet, for the maidens who once laughed there now wept, knowing their goddess carried grief too great to share. Yet still she wove. Her loom struck its rhythm, steady as a heartbeat, binding the world together for as long as it would hold. On the plain of Revered, when the hosts of gods and giants gathered, Frigg stood among the goddesses. She bore no spear, nor helm, nor shield, yet her presence was as mighty as any warrior. For she carried not weapons, but the strength of love, the memory of family, the bonds that even death cannot unmake. She watched as Odin marched to face Fenrir, as Thor strode to meet Jormungandr, as Heimdall and Loki prepared for their final clash. Her heart was heavy, for she knew what must come, her husband devoured, her sons fallen, the gods undone. Yet she did not falter. To the last, Frigg bore her grief as she always had, silently, steadfastly, with dignity. When Odin fell to Fenrir's jaws, her cry was like the breaking of the sky, a sound that shook even the fiercest hearts. When Thor staggered and fell after slaying the serpent, she bowed her head in mourning, yet she did not abandon the field. For she knew that even in destruction, there lies the seed of renewal. And so, when the flames consumed the worlds, when Yggdrasil itself trembled, Frigg remained, not as a warrior, but as the silent strength that endures beyond ruin. Some skalds say she perished with the rest, vanishing into the smoke of doom. Others whisper that she wove even through the fire, and that her threads carried the promise of rebirth, binding the new world to rise from the ashes of the old. For though Ragnarok brought the end of gods, it did not end love. And in Frigg's sorrow lay the quiet truth, that the bonds of family, of hearth, of mother to child, endure beyond fire and fate. Thus her name lived on, whispered in the dawn of the new age, not as a goddess of victory, but as the eternal queen whose strength was love, and whose weaving outlasted even the twilight of the gods.